Hello, EnderSword here again with another replay, this time from Silver League, featuring our Protoss Wrechd and the Zerg Zapdoz. We'll be focusing mostly on Wrechd during this game, and the key themes to what we're going to be looking at today are centered around production, scouting, and getting tunnel vision during an attack or during a maneuver. So those are the things we're going to focus on as this progresses. Again, this is part of a series looking at Bronze, Silver, and Gold League play to see what improvements can be made in general in macro, in mechanics, and just in overall strategic play, and where to focus your attention. So the first thing we see going on is this pylon going down. It is at an appropriate location. You do want to tend to wall off against Zerg. You can choose to do this at this choke here. Some people will opt for a fast expand and choke off this region. Either is fine, depending on what you want to do, obviously, with your game, but this is good pylon placement. Now, I will note that the scouting that is occurring, Ratchet has chosen to scout diagonally first. I'm not sure what his motivation behind this exactly is, but it does elongate your total travel time. By going diagonally, he'll end up having to cut back and go diagonally the other way. It just makes your scouting a little longer. So if there was something like a 6-pool, 9-pool, some sort of attack that he had to defend in a certain way, he would know about it much later. So there is a bit of a risk to going that long position first, having to cut back and cut back. You're just taking a little bit of a risk by doing that. Not a huge deal, but it can develop into a problem, and it's not generally a habit you want to have. We see the standard formation going on. We do have a bit of an issue in that this probe is out here a little early. The probe that came out to put down the gateway was also there a little early. It's only about 4 or 5 seconds that he is actually there waiting for the building to go down, but those seconds do add up over the course of the game. And very early on, when it's your first 2, 3, 4 buildings, those should be pretty tight. You should try and get those very much on time. Now we see the other common problem happening, which is that no probes are being produced, and this pylon didn't go down until he was already at 1818. He had to wait until that pylon actually finished before producing the zealot, and still has not begun production back at the Nexus yet. So you've got probes completely stopped at 18, and that's not really by design at this point. See, they start up again there. The first zealot comes out, and you do generally want that to come back into this choke so that you're guarded against lings or additional scouting. And speaking of scouting, we'll now take a look at Ratchets Probe, which finally got to the Zerg base. He does see that the natural has not been taken yet. He does verify that Zapdoz is in fact there by taking a look at the creep, but then doesn't scout any further than that. Instead sneaks down to the third expansion, where he's going to start to be a little sneaky and put down a pylon there for some sort of proxy play. It is okay to be sneaky and do this sort of play if that's what you want to do, but it's another thing to do this blindly. So he's not sure what exists in Zapdoz's base right now. He knows that there wasn't an expansion there at the time, and it is a bit late for this to be going down. So it's perfectly reasonable to think that there would be some one base aggression coming out of here. So he doesn't know whether it's just this spawning pool, doesn't know whether there's a roach warren down, doesn't know whether there's a baneling nest down, doesn't really know what to expect. But you should be expecting some form of early aggression out of this. So to put down a proxy and then put down a Stargate maybe doesn't make a lot of sense given the information available to Ratchet at this point. If we look back at the base, we're still defended by 3 units, and that is all. Just now, additional gateways are starting to go up, and this is a bit insufficient at the moment. Again, given what Zapdoz could potentially have, and which Wretched is blind to at the moment, it could be a lot worse than this. There could be 7 roaches on the way. There could be a bunch of lings. There could be banelings already done. There could be any number of things that would completely shut down this Stargate and just be able to break this front very, very quickly. So it's important not to lose sight of what you're doing back at home just because you're focused completely on this proxy play up here. We do see probe production is completing reasonably well. However, these gateways are just left there. In that entire time, we've added 1 unit to the front defense, and that's just not sufficient at this point. A lot of these things are being ignored, again, because all the focus is over here. He's very much anticipating, oh, my Void Rays are going to be ready soon, and what am I going to do with those? So that immediately when they come out, he starts that attack, but while he's attacking, nothing's being built. When you do have one of these surprise attacks in particular, especially one of these air-type attacks, Void Rays, Banshees, something like that, one of the typical responses you should expect is an all-in back against your front. If you actually do critical damage with these, an all-in is basically the person's go-to counter, and this currently does not hold any sort of all-in. So we do see the Void Rays kind of meander in. They target down a few drones. They're targeting the Baneling Nest, kind of flip between the Overseer, the Spore Crawlers, Broodling. They're not really focused on what they're actually here to do, and they don't end up maximizing the damage that they could have done. It's likely in the time that it took to prepare this that the lair itself could have completely gone down. He could have struck a completely crippling blow, whereas he ended up taking out 1. He'll end up getting 2 buildings here. It's just not really focused attack. There's not really an objective that was going on there. Didn't cause a lot of severe economic damage. Didn't really cause a huge problem. Of course, we get a poke in the front from the Lings. And again, during that entire time, 3 Zealots were produced and didn't really help out. Another Void Ray was produced, but he just kind of forgot about it in this attack, didn't bring that in to help out, and that certainly would be a bit of a help in doing damage here. You can't just focus, again, on what you're using at the moment at the expense of everything else. Finally, he does realize that he has to defend himself a bit on the home front. So warps in a few more units, but we can see at this point that the money has absolutely gotten out of hand. He could have expanded by now. He could have a lot more warp gates down. He could have completely teched to Colossus. Now knowing that the only tech that exists is the spawning pool, he could have already gotten Colossus out and just absolutely shut it down. He could have gotten more Void Rays out. He could have done anything. Again, just making any units. If he had spent that all on only Zealots, it would have completely locked things down. And we do have the inevitable poke in here. Very odd positioning by Wrechd. Trapping the Zerglings in before too many get into the base is good, but we can see that he was stuck on a move command there for a little while. So while he was trapped in against the Zerglings, there wasn't actually an attack command going. Instead, he gets a full surround on him, and that army just kind of disappears. The Lings come into the mineral line, and at this point, Wrechd taps completely out of the game, and basically concedes from a game that he had a very large advantage in, even with a lot of that missed production. So again, to go over the 3 keys to this game, these warp gates, while producing once he got attacked, were idle for the vast majority of the game. And at the same time, money was just skyrocketing. There's no reason to not be producing things. There's no reason to not be adding more facilities and adding another expansion. There's just no reason not to get ahead as you are going along. The second key point was scouting here. When these Void Rays were made as the decision to go with, no scouting was done. Scouting was simply used to verify that this was the location he was at, and was not used to check on what sort of tech, what sort of army, what sort of economy he had. No information was really gained other than which base you're in, which you do see out of a lot of low-level players. They just think scouting is finding out where you are. That is not the case. You do have to take a look around and actually see what's going on to know whether or not this sort of play is actually appropriate. for what you're trying to do. And the third overall point, which was probably the killer in this game, was extreme tunnel vision. Once those void rays started to come out, Wrechd started thinking, yes, this is going to work. He doesn't know that these are coming. This is going to be awesome. And just completely forgets about all production back at home. Supply blocks himself, doesn't produce out of the warp gates. Even gets to a point where 2 void rays are over here and a third right here, and he doesn't even think to bring it forward or rally it forward. So you just can't get caught in looking at what you're doing so completely that you forget everything else you're doing. During these attacks, you're essentially paralyzing the other person. He had to overreact by putting down spores everywhere, ended up wasting about 8 or 9 drones, losing a few. You gained an advantage in doing that. So part of that response has to be that you gain an advantage back home by creating an unbeatable force while you're distracting your opponent. Don't let the distraction for your opponent become a distraction for yourself. So that's all for this game. I'll be doing a couple more today. I'll probably jump up to a couple gold level games before looping back to bronze a bit. Again, I am looking at all 3 leagues. I do appreciate any feedback that people are able to give, and I'll try and tailor these to that in the future. Thanks for watching.